Most of the cats should be on the streets because true love. Most of the time they're sitting and crying at home. Well, they know they gotta get going. Out of the door and down in the street all alone. Trucking like a good man.
Hey, good late morning here on Sunday, 3 August 2025. Hopefully you can see this. I'll go with different ranges so that it's legible. So what you've got here is start of time with a 0 and a 1 on 9/11. You will know them by their symbols, the party switcher. Now, she put out some truth right before the Iran bombing that, hey, there's no nuclear weapons there, but there was thumbs related items. Good mid-afternoon. It's 3 August. 9 August is 333. The sturgeon moon will be upon us. Now, as you watch this, if you dare to believe that the government directly lies to us and that Israeli scientists are fibbers, they try so hard to scare the hell out of people. And it's very ironic because when you would expect them to quell it, they're pushing it up. The 8/8 was fake. Get a load of this. Please know that we're going to 5th density one day. That's a level of awareness beyond the 4th density. It's evolutionary. We're mind, body, spirit. Watch this and learn. Okay, let's get spiritual about a comet with the name Atlas included.
Fresh observations are now shedding light on this mysterious new interstellar visitor, and what they reveal is sparking serious curiosity. Scientists are starting to notice some things that don't quite add up. It still looks like a bright, glowing comet, but they argue that this object deserves serious attention, because what appears ordinary at first glance may in fact be something truly extraordinary. While many experts believe this object is simply a comet, likely coming from the dense star-filled region near the center of our galaxy, others aren't so sure. Some scientists have raised questions about its unusual behavior and characteristics, suggesting there might be more to it than meets the eye. They argue that we shouldn't dismiss it as just another space rock. Instead, it deserves a closer, more serious study. A few researchers have even gone so far as to suggest that this object might not be entirely natural at all. They propose that it could be masking some kind of alien technology beneath its comet-like appearance. One of the most well-known voices raising this possibility is Professor Avi Loeb, an astrophysicist from Harvard. He recently stated that this object might actually be of artificial, possibly extraterrestrial origin, and that we should stay open to surprising discoveries. Professor Loeb isn't making these claims without reason. He points to specific details about 3I Atlas's motion and path through space that seem too unusual to be purely coincidental. According to him, the object's trajectory and certain other features don't completely align with what we'd expect from a natural comet. One of the strange things about 3I Atlas is that even though it entered our solar system quite a while ago, our telescopes didn't spot it until it was already very close. That's not how things usually go. Most objects coming from interstellar space are detected early, when they're still far away. But this one slipped through, mainly because of the direction it came from, which made it difficult to detect. It was heading in from a part of the sky.
Now, Get a load of what's going on here. It's multi-dimensional consciousness. This is an objective scientific researcher, Avi Loeb from Harvard, astrophysicist, who's making a contention. He's not the Pope. He's not anybody other than an observer. And they're on board.
That's hard for us to monitor effectively. Another major point is about its orbit. Most interstellar objects enter at random angles, but this one is different. Its path lies almost perfectly in the same flat plane that the planets orbit in, the ecliptic. That kind of alignment is incredibly rare, and it's not just a coincidence. This angle would actually allow a flyby path that brings it closer to multiple planets, almost like a planned route. It's similar to how we designed the trajectory of our Voyager spacecraft to pass by several planets for study. According to calculations, the chances of this kind of precise alignment happening randomly is only about 0.2%, and it gets even more curious. The object passed unusually close to Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. These are some of the closest planets to Earth, and having an object from another star system come so near to all three in one journey is highly unlikely. The chances of this happening randomly are around 0.005%, which is extremely rare. It's almost as if the object is on a carefully chosen path, one that maximizes interaction with the inner solar system.
Wow.
Another weird coincidence is that when 3I Atlas comes closest to the Sun or its perihelion, it will be on the opposite side of the Sun from Earth. This means Earth will be completely blocked from seeing it at that moment. The Sun will be right in the way. The chance of this kind of alignment is around 7%, which again is not very high. It feels almost like the object is deliberately avoiding our view, slipping past Earth through its one major blind spot.
So,
all right, let's listen to him.
the unusual trajectory of this object offers the possibility that it might have been designed so as to have some goals of a reconnaissance mission. So it's possible that it's a comet, but if that's the case, it will become very clear as it comes closer to the Sun and gets heated, so that its evaporation rate gets much larger, and then the glow of dust and gas around it should be apparent.
On the other hand, some scientists completely disagree with Avi Loeb's ideas. They believe his claims don't have enough solid evidence to be taken seriously.
It's irresponsible science. This is just coincidence, the fact that it comes through the solar system.
According to them, there's nothing particularly unusual
She's
about
a
this
boob.
object. But even so...
All right. I'd like to get to another Russian analyst who has a take on this with some credibility. Our man. Here we go.
Hello, wonderful person. This is Anton, and once again, we're going to have to discuss the third interstellar comet discovered in the solar system, the comet 3I Atlas. The comet that was accidentally discovered just a few weeks ago, and the object that captured the attention of astronomers worldwide. But it didn't take long to already cause a bit of controversy.
Remember now, the Nishimura comet, came out of nowhere, and a Japanese amateur observer picked it up right in the 9/11 window when Leo and Virgo are together.
Particularly around new claims that maybe this is not just some kind of a natural space rock. And yeah, you might have guessed who this is coming from. The now somewhat controversial Israeli scientist, Avi Loeb. The Harvard scientist that became super popular after his original proposition in 2017 that the first interstellar comet Oumuamua was potentially an extraterrestrial probe. And so in this video, I wanted to break down some of the facts we know about this object, talk about the evidence that we are pretty certain.
I think that was Nibiru. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm a gambler.
Certain that this is a comet, and specifically address some of the Avi Loeb's claims. Mostly dissecting why, based on the scientific data, none of the claims he makes seem to hold up. And so here we're going to focus on facts and not the hype. And so first, let's establish exactly what this is. Discovered on July 1st, 2025 by NASA-funded Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, or ATLAS. At first, this was a relatively faint and a relatively small object, but it was unusual because it was moving at blistering speed of 61 kilometers per second, something that was completely unexpected for any natural object. And follow-up observations within the next few days confirmed its hyperbolic trajectory, which was a key indicator that this was an interstellar object coming from outside of the solar system. It was moving way too fast to
What is a Hyperborean human?
be gravitationally bound to our sun, and it was definitely going to leave the solar system, never to come back. Which of course made this the third confirmed interstellar object after Oumuamua and Comet Borisov. You can learn more about both objects in some of the previous videos in the description. But the initial observations from July 1st, July 2nd contain a little bit of ambiguity about what exactly this might be, an asteroid or a comet. But within just a single day, within approximately 24 hours, multiple telescopes confirmed that this is definitely a comet. It contained a coma and a short tail. One of the first confirmations was by the Nordic Optical Telescope and was conducted by David Jewett and Jane Liu. And they definitively confirmed that this was an active object with a diffuse tail. And it was around this time that this became designated as Comet 2025 N1. So even before we confirmed that this was an interstellar object, it was already confirmed to be a comet. And this is where Avi Loeb enters the picture. Pretty much right away, he turns his attention on 3i Atlas, and on July 16, 2025, publishes a paper, side note, not a peer-reviewed paper, just a preprint, speculating that, okay, this is also possibly some kind of an extraterrestrial spacecraft, based on some of the anomalous characteristics. And so the question is, what exactly are these anomalies? Well, the first one is apparently its large size. The second one is the lack of identifiable chemicals. Also, the trajectory in his view was improbably aligned with the solar system, specifically the ecliptic plane, and seemed to involve close approaches to multiple planets, with the last one being the fuzziness of the object. Here, the observed fuzz was not a coma, but was just smearing due to the fast motion of the object.
Just to make sure you understand terms, the ecliptic plane is flat, so all the planets orbit at different speeds and distances, but if you look at it sideways, they're all like a big LP record. And being on the north side or the south side of the record is the ecliptic plane. And planets obey laws, and a few of them don't. Nibiru being one, and clearly comets take their own path too, with occupancy.
And not because this was a comet. And as you can imagine, pretty much right away, everyone in the scientific community drew strong criticism against this somewhat bizarre paper. And so let's go through some of these points one by one and see what the actual evidence says.
Now, before he kicks into this, I haven't watched it. Right now, the opinion of the Israeli scientist is, in my take, much more in tune than the woman who made some comments earlier.
Let's start with the size. Abilou and others initially used the brightness of this object to estimate the potentially large size of 3i Atlas. But as a lot of sources clearly explain, estimating the size of a comet's nucleus is very, very difficult. And mostly because it's surrounded by a very bright cloud of gas that for comets we call a coma. And specifically this first point he makes seems to be completely invalidated with new observations from several additional sources. For example, here are the images from Hubble, almost definitively showing us that this is a comet. Likewise, the observations from Vera Rubin Observatory that accidentally captured the comet even before it was officially discovered actually even show us what this object was before it became too cometary, or before its tail became too large. And here the observations suggest a nucleus that's about 11.2 kilometers in diameter, or about 7 miles. And though obviously 7 miles is maybe a little bit large, and is definitely the largest interstellar comet we've seen, this is not the largest comet out there. As a matter of fact, you can learn about the largest comet we've ever seen in a somewhat recent video in the description. Now that one is definitely large. And by the way, it's also kind of headed toward us. But yeah, that one we know for sure is not aliens. And so being large does not mean that this is an alien spaceship.
We know for sure.
It just means that it's a large comet. I mean, honestly, I don't even know why I'm saying this.
I'm entering the tournament.
That tournament is a death sentence.
That was funny.
Come with me.
Now, I
I want
respect that
attention
man.
so no one else would have to die.
He's not.
Relationships are built on
I'm
trust,
going to
John.
speak over this bozo commercial. We did this, Kids of the Future. We watched this and believed it. With stunts and AI, and
So
Will
we're doing
Smith is
mythos.
dead,
Have
but
fun.
he's
No, we're
not
not.
any him.
Alright.
Woo-hoo, Twisted Metal, Peacock, NBC.
First Horizon Bank took all the
First
big
Horizon.
resources and muscle,
So the Hyperboreans are the
all
northern
the small bank personal
Eskimo,
attention and hustle,
Igloo,
and packed
Iditarod,
it all into
way
one
up
phone.
there.
So in ways big and small,
They
you
know
can
what's going on with
secure the bank
Magnetic
on the go,
North. They're
wherever you
Algonquin,
go.
ultimately,
When
because
the
they're
best of
way
big
up.
meets the best of small,
The
you get
Indians
it all.
got this hemisphere.
First Horizon Bank.
Bye.
But the obvious giveaway was comparing the observations from Vera Rubin Observatory to some of the most recent observations that definitively show us that this object increased in brightness and now contains a tail. There's absolutely nothing artificial going on here. Okay, let's discuss the second point.
Okay.
Lack of identifiable chemicals. And this
Now,
one
that's
was
alive.
discredited almost right away. Observations from
Everything's
several
alive.
telescopes, including Gemini South
And
and
density
NASA
of
Infrared
awareness.
Telescope Facility, definitively show
So
that
even if it's a flying rock, it's first density 6th octave. But I contend that there's occupancy. There must be. Yeshua and his wife and that family can do whatever they want in this solar system because he's the sun and it'll shine either way. It's dissipated consciousness. It's all alive, so stare at the sun and know the Mayan calendar because that's where we're going. 6 days a week, 18 days a month, times 20, and 5 lazy days. This guy's going to find that out, Mr. Petrov, and I love this dude, but he is trying to separate himself from the Israeli scientists and hasn't really proven his point yet.
that the coma of this object is made out of at least water ice and potentially silicate grains, something that we almost always find inside comets. And the
Water,
initial
ice.
non-detection of some gases, like for example cyanides or hydroxides, seems to be consistent with comets at very large distances away from the sun. And that's because usually comets become more
Chemical.
active as they get closer to the sun. Okay, I'm
It's
going to
the
try not to
atomic
be
table.
too cynical here. Basically, he made another
It's the
assumption that
atomic
seems to be
bomb.
incorrect. But here, even the pre-discovery
Three
by
waves
NASA's
of
TESS
volunteers.
telescope suggests that this object was already active as far as 6.4 astronomical units away from the sun, hinting on a lot of volatile ices, and once again suggesting that this was indeed a comet. Nothing anomalous here. But obviously all of this will be confirmed with the observations from the James Webb that's going to be able to see pretty much all of the elements
The
inside the
Webster.
coma. As of recording of this video, this has not been done yet. And so the chemical evidence points directly to a natural comet once again. Third, let's tackle that smearing argument. This is perhaps the most glaring factual error in his claims, and unfortunately seems to demonstrate some kind of a fundamental misunderstanding of basic observational astronomy. And honestly, I'm kind of feeling bad even saying this. Here, Avi Loeb argues that fuzz or elongated appearance around Atlas is simply an artifact of telescope's motion relative to the object, causing the object to smear. However, multiple
Now, if one perceives this guy Avi as like a scientific terrorist who is drawing out an illusion of the Starship Enterprise, that may be more to his point. Any Israeli scientist in that deep state, you better beware. Use discernment.
sources, and pretty much all of the astronomers, point out that we usually use a technique called non-sidereal tracking, which means that the telescope is programmed to follow the moving object itself rather than background stars. And the evidence for this is pretty clear in a lot of the published images, where the stars in the background are trailed, while the comet itself is distinct and appears as a non-smeared.
A good lesson to take away from our lives in the past 300 years is people talk a lot, and there's got to be truth in the substance. some is inverted, some is choice of words, but there is truth in everything. So be all source and pick out the parts that make sense to you and put it all together, because there's only one truth. And you see a highly divided opinion here between a Yiddish, supposedly, Avi, and a Russian dude that's put out some awesome stuff in the past.
Fuzzy object. It also clearly shows an extended coma, like in this image from Hubble, directly refuting Loeb's claims that this is just smearing.
So we're into Hubble.
Whatsoever, and instead seems to represent some kind of a complete conceptual misunderstanding of how telescopes usually observe things. As planetary scientist Michelle Bannister noted, it has a coma. No large telescope has seen anything but a coma. Okay, we have another point to go through. The trajectory, and specifically the ecliptic alignment. Here, Avi Loeb suggests that the close approach to Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, combined with the alignment to the ecliptic plane, seems to be anomalous and could indicate a guided artificial trajectory. And while it's true that Atlas is going to pass relatively close to these planets, for example 0.2 astronomical units away from Mars and 0.4 AU from Jupiter, its trajectory is actually tilted 175 degrees with respect to the ecliptic. And so the more correct description here would be retrograde and inclined by 5 degrees. And so even though its path does bring it to the inner solar system, there's absolutely nothing anomalous about this trajectory, and nothing to suggest that anything here is artificial. As a matter of fact, as I've stated in some of the previous videos, it poses absolutely no threat to planet Earth, and at most will pass approximately 1.8 AU away from our planet. And I mean, if this was some kind of an artificial intelligence, would it not consider coming closer to our planet instead? And so no, it definitely does not have an anomalous trajectory, and it definitely is not going to pass close to inner planets. At least not to our planet. But beyond disproving these anomalies...
So let's boil it down to words. Artificial. He's saying it's not artificial. So therefore it's authentic. That's the other choice of words. And just to get down to the glyph, coma, com, co. Start with co. That's together. Com, communicate. Comma, coma, is a state of status. Princess Diana was in a coma for years on Mars and was rescued. He may not know that.
There are obviously a lot of other evidence suggesting that this is a purely natural object. There's nothing unusual about it, except for maybe, of course, where it's coming from. And so the only real anomaly about this object is the fact that it seems to be coming from the really ancient previous videos. It poses absolutely no threat to planet Earth, and at most will pass approximately 1.8 AU away from our planet. And I mean, if this was some kind of an artificial intelligence, would it not consider coming closer to our planet instead? And so no, it definitely does not have an anomalous trajectory, and it definitely is not going to pass close to inner planets. At least not to our planet. But beyond disproving these anomalies...
So let's boil it down to words. Artificial. He's saying it's not artificial. So therefore it's authentic. That's the other choice of words. And just to get down to the glyph, coma, com, co. Start with co. That's together. Com, communicate. Comma, coma, is a state of status. Princess Diana was in a coma for years on Mars and was rescued. He may not know that.
There are obviously a lot of other evidence suggesting that this is a purely natural object. There's nothing unusual about it, except for maybe, of course, where it's coming from. And so the only real anomaly about this object is the fact that it seems to be the really ancient part of the Milky Way, with the suggested age for this comet potentially now being over 9 billion years old. And that's because it seems to be coming from the thick disk of the Milky Way galaxy. And that's because its high vertical velocity compared to the solar system can only be explained if it came from the thick disk population, hundreds of light years above the thin disk.
Now, according to Sam the Illusionist, who does channeling, early on, we got date-time groups on how everything started. And our creator is over 6.3 billion years old. And our planet, Gaia, is over 4 billion years old. So anytime you hear a number higher than that, take pause, know that that's non-existence. And there was a big bang, or however you want to conceptualize the day-by-day improvement on awareness from the first vibe. Lambda is the 6th dimension. Instruments don't measure it. It holds everything together. It's disordinal because the 5th dimension is the universe and Star Wars, and 4th dimension is time. 3rd is your box, height, width, and length. So you go up from the box, add time, add Star Wars, and then you drop to the 6th dimension.
Where the solar system orbits. Now we have no idea exactly where it came from, but right now the initial evidence points at this being a super ancient object. And this of course provides a plausible explanation for this just being a natural object ejected from some kind of a star system a long time ago, very likely during the planetary formation in that ancient star system 9 to 13 billion years ago. And because of the water-ice-rich composition observed in its coma, we can also deduce that this object was very likely formed pretty far from the star, possibly beyond the snow line, where water ice can condense into solid form. And just like so many other comets in the solar system, it was eventually ejected, possibly through some kind of a close encounter with a giant planet, or maybe a passage of another star, something that has been simulated by various models, and something that's pretty well understood. So once again, pretty much nothing anomalous here at all. Which brings us to that main question. So why does Avi Loeb continuously push these narratives, even in face of obvious contradictory evidence? Why, Avi? Why? Well, as many of his colleagues pointed out, since 2017, Avi Loeb essentially gained all of his reputation by making these extraordinary claims, or essentially making a lot of sensationalism, very often leveraging his Harvard affiliation simply to attract media attention
He's closer
and to
than
then sell his
Lady in
books,
Hawaii.
which is exactly what he did in 2017, what he then did a few years ago with his expedition in the Pacific Ocean, and what I think he's going to be doing now again. And so, as this video by Professor Dave explores in more detail, the video that you can find in the description, he seems to have completely shifted his approach to science. A lot of his early papers, specifically from the 1980s through early 2000s, focused heavily on traditional foundational astrophysics, with emphasis on birth of first stars, black holes, large structures in the universe, and gravitational microlensing.
Good brother. Let's go. Hey, good late morning here on Sunday, 3 August 2025. Hopefully you can see this. I'll go at different ranges so that it's legible. So what you've got here is start of time with a 0 and a 1 on 9/11. Really started in 3 BC, the day that Yeshua ben Joseph was born. So if you gazed upon this, you know that today, being the 3rd, is actually day 326 on day 0, and 327 you start with a 1. Using the day 0 start, 9 August is kin 333 of 360 days, and then 6 through 10 September are lazy days. So I follow a lot of space weather providers. This particular guy I've tracked for a couple of years now. Not too much recently. What he's discovered himself, he goes to battle with the government and he suspects plots. So in this case, the concise conclusion he comes to is that the US government over-exacerbated the magnitude of the Kamchatka earthquake at 8.8, and it's really lower. So let's listen to him.
So this is what I did. Went down the body magnitude list. And look at the numbers over here on the right-hand side.
I would just like to say that he does Earth. Stefan Burns, who I also follow, Morning Dew, Thor News, are way more diverse in their coverage. Thor News is out of the box, but now you've got a guy like Eric Briggs, who I recall said that he taught this man what he's doing, which is humorous. So let's continue. He's being quiet, which I will.
Okay, and I'm getting quiet because look. First of all, look how many stations are reporting around the world and region. I don't even really want to get into this, but body magnitude showing that it's all in the 6 and 7 and upper 7 range. All the other people, all the other agencies in the world reporting 7.8 to 7.9 magnitude. USGS originally came in at 8.0 magnitude.
You hear that?
Then USGS waited an hour or more and upgraded the earthquake to 8.7, while everybody else had 7.8. The Russians, the Europeans, the Australians, New Zealand, they all had 7.8 to 7.9. USGS had 8.0. They waited about an hour, maybe even longer, then took it up to 8.7. Then took it up to 8.8. Then, at the same time they did that, they elevated the tsunami advisory to a warning and told everybody in Hawaii, and even as far as the west coast of the United States, that a wave was coming at them. However, the buoys did not reflect this. So the buoys didn't reflect it. The body wave magnitude didn't show it. And then all we're relying on is a cubicle farm of nerds at the USGS saying it's a greater earthquake, while even the Russians, when it's their actual territory where the earthquake is, as well as the Europeans, all reporting a full magnitude less. And the difference is there would be just a regional-wide tsunami here around where the earthquake is, and regional-wide damage that would be moderate but not incredibly huge damage. With a 7.8 to 7.9 earthquake,
I'm going to show you something
but it would
that
only go out to maybe
you'll
the North
find
Carolina Islands,
weird.
maybe over to Alaska, maybe over to the west-northwest, up into Russia itself onto Kamchatka, and maybe going out this way. As it would go out, of course.
All right, I let it go by. I'm going to pop back one. Here's Florida, Gulf of Mexico, the rendition, and here's the backbone that's the west coast. Just to say, it's, you know, this used to be Lemuria, and the land used to be here. So with all these actions that are going on, I believe water is going to be permitted to go back where it belongs, and therefore the adjustment is going to be amazing. So I'm going to go back one. You know, there was a 3.0 in New Jersey, right outside Manhattan. And that's on some huge freaking piece of granite, or, you know, stuff that's been there millions of years and really doesn't move. All right, so pay attention to over here.
Is, and regional-wide damage that would be moderate but not incredibly huge damage. With a 7.8 to 7.9 earthquake,
right
you would get a wave, but it would only go out to maybe the North Carolina Islands, maybe over to Alaska, maybe over to the west-northwest, up into Russia itself onto Kamchatka, and maybe going out this way. As it would go out, of course it would dissipate, and we wouldn't expect much to come into Hawaii at all. On a 7.8 to 7.9, maybe an 8.0 earthquake, you might get a minor 6-inch to 1 foot wave. You get bigger waves, sustained waves, even in storms in Hawaii, from something that would be equal to a 7.8 to 7.9. I'm weighing this all in my head. I got people asking me, should they evacuate to higher ground? And I'm like, okay, if I say no, we're going against the U.S. government official warnings publicly, and that's against the law. Secondly, I don't want to stamp my name and warn my viewers for a tsunami that's not coming to them, and I can see the buoys. So what do? In this case, I took both my videos down where I was showing the government warning.
Personally, I see an overreaction. However, he's got proof that he's been dealt with in official capacity. So he's very guarded, and he didn't do anything wrong when you hear what he did.
Which I'm totally allowed to do, no problem. And I just didn't put anything back up.
He took him down.
And I told my viewers on Twitch, we'll wait and see. And what happened? Well, the media overinflamed it. They tried to say an 8-foot wave hit California, and they tried to say 4-foot waves were coming in, 4 foot now, to Hawaii over actual tidal levels. And when you watch regular surfing videos in
See, now that's the highest point in the Pacific. Honolulu is Elohim. You know, you have to go spiritual with this.
Hawaii at high tide, you can get whole groups of people washed off beaches from a large 20 or 30 foot wave or series of waves that come in sustained over and over again. And they're like tsunamis, but they're just from storms or swells out in the Pacific. Much bigger
It's interesting.
at any given time in Hawaii. So 4 feet on top of that would be a big deal, but it was calm, placid seas for the most part on all the cameras. So we're watching, we're waiting, we're all watching and waiting because the USGS upgraded the earthquake from 8 to 8.7, then 8.8. Let me explain the difference on magnitudes when we get that big, right? Like the difference between an 8 and an 8.8, you might just say, oh, it's just 0.8, Dutch. No, the difference on large earthquakes like this, when you add 0.8 onto an 8, it's like adding 8 8s onto it, or 1,000 6s onto it. To get it up from 8 to 8.8, you have to add in 1,000 6.0 earthquakes. It's an insane upgrade that I...
So here's grid north right at the top. Grid north. Magnetic north is our opinion. Now, given this image, it's been moving, magnetic north has been moving from Canada over to Russia. And it's increased since 2019. Isn't that cool?
didn't trust. Not trusted enough to tell my family.
You see Yeshua's second daughter. Here's elevation. It's America. This is one long America. It's a hemisphere. Again, this is the San Andreas. San Madrid's over here. Kind of. Oh, here's Mexico. So, over here. All right, let's listen to this guy.
Family on the West Coast that they need to be prepared for a tsunami. And for my viewers in Hawaii who are watching on Twitch, I just told them, look, we're going to sit back and watch. I would listen to your local authorities. Your local authorities can be monitoring the actual drawback of any water.
I'm
and
certainly
if there's
not
any kind of actual wave that comes in, they will tell you. You should listen to your local state authorities. And of course, national warnings you should also listen to. I'm not here to contradict any warnings.
My point would be if he was like a fucking talk show host on some secondary network and they were opinionating on potential to predict something less than the fear factor, goes counterintuitive, but it ain't fucking illegal to disagree with these assholes, but he's a professional. He's at that level. Point made.
But when I was looking at the buoys, and the buoys are showing a disturbance just around where the earthquake is, and the wave activity is reflecting that, and the size of the earthquake reflects that at every other agency in the world, and the USGS comes in and does a crazy upgrade by 10 times power, then they flex the arms of Big Brother to get everybody in the military and National Guard and
Listen to
warrants
this.
and evacuate to higher ground, and I just sat back and watched it all happen.
He's putting it out
comment
now.
at all, because I do not want to be interfering with government stuff during disasters. That was an article they even wrote about earthquake forecasting, was that they were worried that earthquake forecasting people would be getting in the way of the government during a disaster. So I backed out completely. And still stayed live, of course, explain myself.
This guy
in a post
throws
over
out
on my
predictions
YouTube community
and
page
admits
and
if they don't
live
come
on
into pass,
Twitch.
but he is,
And here we are now.
his batting
So what
average
came
is
into
way
Hawaii?
up there.
Nothing.
Like
Just
7-10 days
little
in the
blip,
future.
just like we would expect, like I told you that day. And nobody else upgraded their earthquake to be 8.8. USGS sticking to their guns. They're trying to say it's the 6th largest earthquake in recorded history.
I didn't see it, but he says he forecasted the Manhattan earthquake, somewhere on that big plate.
I mean, there's just so much wrong with this. So what's happened since? Now, let's take a look. So now that you understand why I don't have... Oh, my videos were all showing the quote-unquote tsunami advisory and warning and so forth, and showing the buoys, and I
have not watched this, so I'm going to go for another few minutes, because it's pretty interesting, his take on stuff.
Talking about it being an 8.7 to 8.8 earthquake. So that was, again, I don't want to have my name stamped to something that I know to be completely false. So it was a whole magnitude
I hope
less.
Stefan
and
Burns
when you get to that
watches
large
this.
level earthquake, 8.0, it's a whole magnitude less at a 7.8. You would expect a regional tsunami around.
It really lays the man-made weather piece on from another dimension.
Russia, maybe going over here into Alaska, and maybe going a little bit down into the Kuril Islands. You would expect an advisory to go out to areas further away. Just saying, keep an eye out if you're a boater or something, you're out there, you got some weird rip currents or something. But other than that, you would just warn around the area, and you wouldn't panic the whole world.
That's the way the ocean flows.
So the difference is huge.
That's why the water is cold down in San Diego.
Take a look at the screen.
You haven't been.
So we're going to zoom in. These are all the earthquakes that struck, including the 8. You can see where the 8 is. It's the huge ring up here on the north side of all this.
Like it's
so
warmer.
These are not aftershocks. Aftershocks would be around where the big earthquake is.
About.
Maybe 50 miles, maybe, even if you want to be generous, you could give it 100 miles out. This is 500,
it's on the 35th degree parallel,
miles
so if
to
you
the
track
south.
that over to the Atlantic.
All of this has happened since the big one. Let's get all the smaller earthquakes out of there, the 4s and 5s and 6s. Look at the 5s and 6s. So it's about 400 to 500 miles of area along the plate boundary system. So let's go look at the USGS plate boundary system, which we can rely on for sure. And it's the red lines I show you in all my updates. So hopefully you can see this here on the screen. This is the Pacific plate, and these are the red lines around it, of course, that define the plate boundary. There's Kamchatka, Russia, and the big earthquake struck on the north side of all this hot mess. This is 24 hours worth of earthquakes from the USGS. So this is not reflecting the last week that I'm showing you here, 4.0 and greater. It's just a hot mess. Let's turn off the rings. Look at this. These are all 4s, 5s, 6s, and near 7.0s that have struck for about 400 miles to the south, going down into the Kuril Islands. So they're not aftershocks, what are they? Well, when you see something like this, just without the numbers, let's turn the numbers off. Turn the rings back on. You see something like this, you might expect it to be called a slow slip. Now, a slow slip is just a term that's used to describe when a plate boundary, like where this red line is, starts to shift and move over a long period of time. You'll see something like this, but it'll be 0s, 1s, and 2s at the most.
Super instant mesmerizer, it never fails. Okay, boys, carry him out.
What can they be? Well, obviously the one on the right is the Donnie, MAGA, the king, so he thinks. That's his son-in-law in the middle, Jared Kushner, born in 81. Why him? And he's being unfurled with toilet paper by the arm of the Bush family tree. George is gone now, senior, but between he, Junior, and Jebby, they did it. Not to mention Vannevar Bush. Remember now, this concordant was 80 years long, and Kushner was born in 1981. He's married to Trump's daughter. Why him? Follow me now and you will not regret. Who gets money from the Saudis?